signature, and it is then our intention to pursue ratification in 2025.
Island drama? No, it's not Casa Amor, it's Chagos chaos. The PM's tangled in a web of personal connections, stirring up a storm over this botched deal. I'll be telling you all the latest on that. And
it's amazing to us to welcome us, even though we are from Great Britain.
Labour's Attorney General, the chief legal advisor in the country, has said the British Empire is deeply racist and that your children should be made to learn about the Empire's legacy of violence. Also,
there is no justification for cancelling these elections whatsoever, other than sheer cowardice of what reform might do to them in those campaigns.
Reform councillor Oliver Freeston was gagged by a council watchdog. Why? Well, he joins us to expose the truth and weigh in on the growing buzz around a potential Tory reform coalition. Plus,
change begins now.
Cabinet chaos? Well, Starmer warns ministers to disrupt or be disrupted. That's as Labour reels from the Chagos sellout and net zero infighting. Are they hiding something? Ex-Defence Secretary Geoff Hoon breaks it down with us, and at 10 p.m, I'll tell you which South Asian country is carrying out mass deportations, putting once Great Britain to absolute shame. Trust me, you're going to be gobsmacked. Also, first they rewrote Roald Dahl. Now they're putting trigger warnings on Shakespeare for popping balloons. How much more of our culture will be sanitised? I'll be joined also by my fantastic panel, Stephen Wolfe, Suzanne Evans and Susie Stride, who'll be giving their expert opinions on all of tonight's top stories. Oh, and what's going on here? Stay tuned to find out what happens next. All that and more. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Mass deportations are happening, just not here in Britain. Find out where next.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 9 o'clock. Leading the news tonight, the government has confirmed that Grenfell Tower will be dismantled nearly 8 years after a fire killed 72 people. The process will take around 2 years and be done sensitively with no changes before June's anniversary of the disaster. The decision follows warnings that the damaged building is deteriorating and only remains stable due to protective measures. Local people and survivors, though, are divided. Some want the tower to remain as a memorial, while others say it's too distressing. Officials have said that key materials will be preserved, though, for a potential memorial if the community wishes. It's day 19 of Donald Trump's second term in office, and Japan have today committed to doubling its defence spending by 2027. At a joint news conference earlier, Trump pledged the full strength of American defence to its ally, as both nations ramp up cooperation against China and tackle North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba promised $1 trillion of investment in the US, calling it unprecedented. The leaders also vowed to lead the world in AI, semiconductors and energy development across the Indo-Pacific. Hamas has named the next hostages to be freed in Gaza this weekend, including 3 men. They are Eli Sharabi, Ohad Ben Ami and Or Levy. 18 hostages have so far been released, with Israel freeing 383 Palestinian prisoners in return. By the end of this first ceasefire stage, more than 33 hostages and 1,900 prisoners are expected to have been released, though Israel says, sadly, 8 of its hostages are believed to be dead. Meanwhile, Hamas has accused Israel of blocking critical humanitarian aid, a claim that is disputed by the United Nations. Back here at home, a new poll is predicting a 3-way tie at the next general election, with Labour cabinet ministers set to lose their seats and Nigel Farage holding the balance of power. The survey of almost 6,000 people found Reform UK would have 175 seats, up from only 5. Labour, meanwhile, would drop from 412 to 174, with the Tories gaining around 50. It would mean that Wes Streeting, Yvette Cooper and Angela Rayner would be among those to lose their seats, with a Conservative and Reform coalition the most likely outcome. A suspected drink driver's car has caused travel chaos today after crashing onto a railway track in Salford. The BMW careered over a roundabout, damaging overhead cables and closing lines between Liverpool and Manchester. Network Rail says repairs will take hours, with services likely disrupted for at least another hour. Northern, TransPennine Express and Transport for Wales trains are all currently affected. And ITV has pulled Gino D'Acampo's shows this weekend from its schedule after accusations of inappropriate and intimidating behaviour on set. Those include Family Fortunes and Secrets of the South. They've both been replaced, with no plans to air a new series filmed last October either. ITV says dozens of people accuse the chef of aggressive and sexualised language, though he denies those claims, calling them deeply upsetting. The broadcaster says it has strengthened duty of care policies in recent years and called the alleged behaviour unacceptable. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in another hour. Now, though, it's back to Alex.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. If you thought the botched Chagos Island surrender was over, well, think again. The latest revelations about the Prime Minister and his alleged mate's personal dealings with Mauritius make Love Island drama look tame. Now let's start with what we know. The Prime Minister, in his infinite wisdom, is allegedly considering handing Mauritius up to £18 billion. Both UK and Mauritian officials have denied this, but have not provided alternative figures as of yet. If that's true, though, that's enough to fund 20 hospitals, 300 primary schools, or a fleet of warships. All things this government is coincidentally delaying or scrapping. Oh, and let's not forget, this money could also pay for that 85% of that elusive black hole in our budget. So why is this happening? Well, if I had to bet, I'd say it's down to the student union politics, teenage-level peer pressure that's now playing itself out on an international scale. And one of Starmer's long-time lefty lawyer mates, Philippe Sands KC, has been pushing for this deal for years. He represented Mauritius against the UK, of course, and seems to despise Britain's history. Mr. Sands compared our legal ownership of Chagos to Russia's invasion of Crimea. Yeah, crazy stuff. Yes, that's Starmer's mate equating Britain's presence in our own territory to Putin's illegal military invasion in Ukraine. It's just utter madness. But it gets worse. Mr. Sands, in a blatant act of defiance, entered British territory, hoisted the Mauritian flag, and acted like some sort of colonial conqueror. It's ironic, isn't it? Oh, funnily enough, he tweeted this then deleted evidence, but it was too late because that video was made by Mauritius' close ally, China, who had their state-owned media make a whole propaganda video on it. I wonder why. Anyway, Mauritian bias doesn't seem to stop there. Today we learned Starmer was wined and dined in Mauritius back in 2013. Well, he was flown out to a 5-star luxury beach resort to speak at a Mauritian Bar Association conference on the Chagos issue. Well, he walked away with that, with a model warship as a gift. And there's, of course, oh, there it is there. There's, of course, that little missing detail about whether the Prime Minister was paid for that trip. Well, I'm sure that will come out eventually. And today, the government finally gave a national security excuse for why we must hand over Chagos. Well, what's their claim? Well, they claim Diego Garcia's electromagnetic spectrum, which enables secure military communications, can't function without a deal because there's a risk it breaches international law, a risk which the UK government will want to avoid. Well, Tom Tugendhat, the former security minister, dismissed that argument pretty fast. He said, as security minister, I saw the advice on the Chagos Islands deal. This explanation is nonsense. Now, he's supported by former government official who also shut down the government's argument. They said the Foreign Office is worried that it would make us look bad if we lost the case to try and keep the territory. They said to the Global South we would look like colonisers again. and that the government are scrambling for a justification for giving away up to $9 billion, and that this telecoms issue could be solved for a fraction of that cost. There you go. This isn't diplomacy, is it? It's a lefty lawyer coup. The Prime Minister seems to be compromised, tangled up in a bias due to his personal relationships and perceived loyalties to Mauritian legal networks. And what's the apparent goal here? I think it's to sell him as some anti-colonialist hero, a man who sacrifices British sovereignty while UK taxpayers get fleeced for billions under the thin guise of reparations. But that being said, let's get the thought of my panel. We've got political consultant Suzanne Evans. We've got Stephen Wolfe, the director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, and Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Well.
OK, surely, I mean, Susie, let's start with you for a bit of balance here. Surely, if Keir Starmer took a 5-star, all-inclusive, all-paid-for trip, which we don't know, it's just alleged, but took this trip, how can he have an unbiased perspective on this deal? He's got close connections with them, has he not?
I mean, to be honest, I've only just seen the article, but, I mean, people can paint it that way if they want to paint it that way. I don't actually think that is why Keir Starmer is going the way he's going. I think, ultimately, you know, James Cleverly, who was obviously the former Foreign Secretary, was also trying to get a deal.
Yep.
And they had 11 rounds of talks to get a deal. So I think this whole, like, toing and froing, ultimately, is the deal a good deal? Look, I'm not an expert in this. It doesn't look great at the moment, I'm going to say. But what I don't think is right is this whole thing of, oh, there's some sort of bias going on. Because otherwise, we would be saying, well, why was James Cleverly trying to get a deal? Why did we have 11 rounds of talks? Why did James Cleverly himself also say it is absolutely right that we adhere to what the International Court has said? That's the words of James Cleverly.
Yeah,
so I don't think there's a split here between...
I think the Tories really botched this from the start, just why we're in this crisis today. But, Suzanne, I mean, you know, can he get away from this bias? Then we've got Felipe Sands, his close mate, who's obviously been anti-Britain from the start. He represented Mauritius against us plenty of times. They're best mates. Is he just being this peer pressure for him to do this?
It's like Keir Starmer's looked around and thought, who can I find who's the most treacherous lawyer in the country? Because those are the ones that I want at my negotiating table. I mean, it's hard to get away from anything but that, isn't it, really? And Susie, with the best will in the world, yeah, James Cleverly got it wrong too. 2 wrongs don't make a right. The fact is this was hidden from the public. The Chagossians don't want this. They don't want to belong to Mauritius in the belly of China. And we saw in that video clip there, you know, the Chinese, of course, they're loving this idea that the Chagossian Islands will become Mauritius because Mauritius is one of their major partners. This whole idea that it belongs to Mauritius is a fabrication dreamt up by the International Court of Justice, which is, frankly, a Russia-China legal entity that we should do what Trump has done, frankly, and say we're not going to take any notice from it. It's completely biased and we're not going to take any notice.
Stephen, do you take that point as well? I mean, China put out that video, they clipped up Felipe Sands' tweet when he hoisted the Mauritian flag on Chagos. You know, surely this is just playing into China's hands, what Starmer's planning to do.
I think the actions of our representatives of Britain in Chagos has given a coup in diplomatic terms to the Chinese, and there's no doubt by showing that particular image when he was trying to delete it from his own X or Facebook or whatever account he's got, then that just shows how important it is for them. Because when we look at the summation of the deal is that we're actually paying someone to take land off us. It's going to cost us billions. It gives an improved opportunity for the Chinese. But I'm more concerned about the one important group of people that this was all supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about giving the Chagossians, who were forced there as slaves to live there, an opportunity to have self-determination. That's my concern with Keir Starmer, because he wants to take us back into the European Union, is another example with the Chagossians that he just does not like people having self-determination. Yeah. And I'm more concerned about them, and I think their issue, by saying we don't want it, speaks more volumes than anything else.
Yeah.
If he really wanted to do this properly, he'd have a referendum. of the Chagossian people. But of course, they're not. He's absolutely not going to do that.
We've obviously, the Chagossians have been in uproar about this. And they've said they want representation, they want to be listened to, but we're seeing that that's still not, transpiring, Susie. Is this just, we saw with Grenfell Tower, that's going to be knocked down, of course, and there hasn't been consultation with those people. This is just a characteristic of the Labour government.
No, I think that's a different thing. I think when you look at Grenfell Tower, there are lots of different groups that are involved in that, and actually there are groups, community groups that are involved in that, some people want to see the tower come down because for them it's a reminder of the horror of what happened. There are other groups that want it to stay because for them, actually it's a reminder of their loved ones. But actually people are quite divided on that. So actually I think it's really important on that to say this isn't, Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer saying, well, we don't know what you think. They've gone in and actually they've listened to people and actually they're going to be very respectful in how they take it down. It's not going to be bulldozed down. It's going to be very carefully taken down. And actually there's going to be a memorial put in there to the people that lost their lives. But actually I don't think they're not listening to it. And it's really important because I actually thought the coverage of that was actually really not good because the fact is there's a whole lot of residents and family members that do want it to be taken down.
Well, I just want to get back to Chagos for a second. Hopefully we'll get to talk about that a little bit later on, Susie. But obviously they haven't had their say and they desperately do want it. And a lot of Chagossians want to remain British.
Yeah, look, let's be honest. When you look at the history of this, it is all a bit mad. What was it, 50 years ago, the British turn up with guns and say, you guys have all... it is, there's nothing good about that, let's be honest.
Bought it off the French.
No.
We got it was the French.
I think, no.
The French did actually steal it from the Mauritians in the first place. And some really interesting stories about losing people on caves just offside the island, if you look into the history about it. But we have to take that back and say, yes, it's been ours for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's been an important strategic area for us. I'm not sure how this lease scenario is going to work. Here we are, we're paying to have the Americans to stay on what was our land for a leasehold period of time. A leasehold, as we know, is not the same as freehold.
Yeah.
And that's where we have the problem.
Just to wrap up, because we're going to move on in a second, the thing that's really upsetting British people, and I don't blame them, is the cost. We're talking about this. Ash, I know the government have said that this is not accurate, these figures aren't accurate, but we've heard the numbers. 18 billion floated around quite a lot
Nigel
this week.
Farage is saying today, if they link it to inflation, it could be as much as 50 billion over the 1999-year term. I got one or the other. But, this invisible black hole, £22 billion, Rachel Reeves said, is a black hole. That's why she's got to put up taxes and cut spending. It's tosh.
Yeah.
It's the biggest whiff of male cow I have ever heard. Because Labour... 18 billion at least on this, 22 billion on Ed Miliband's carbon capture scheme, which MPs have said is completely, potentially unworkable.
The black hole's turned into a crater.
Labour have said that figure is inaccurate, and also actually the President Bush has backtracked on that.
I've got to move on, unfortunately, guys. Sorry, we're out of time. But we'll get stuck in with my panel later on, I promise. Anyway, we're giving you 2 chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's all the details you need.
The Great British Giveaway is officially 1 year old, and we have a birthday treat for you. We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck. Well, coming up, another wild week for Reform UK, isn't it? A bombshell new poll puts a Tory Reform coalition at the top of the list of probabilities. Could this ever happen? And why was a Reform councillor ticked off as simply wanting to discuss Sick Note Britain? But up next, Lord Hermer has called the British Empire deeply racist. Is he right? Well, this is Patrick Christie's Tonight, only on GB News with me, Alex Armstrong.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns. Then we had soaring energy costs. Then we had a hike in national insurance for employers. Then we had soaring wage costs. And now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers. And if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs. You know, remember they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin. And the last thing I need to do is go and get in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak. Friends go to meet, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead, because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News, 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christie's Tonight with me, Alex Armstrong, only on GB News. It's time now for our head-to-head. Yes, in a controversial interview, Attorney General Lord Hermer has called the British Empire deeply racist and argued that its legacy of violence should be taught in schools to your kids. He also revealed he fought for reparations, including the $19.9 million payout to Kenyans affected by British colonial abuses. His comments sparked criticism from across the political spectrum, with figures like Robert Jenrick accusing him of holding far-left views, while others defended the Empire's positive contributions, of course. Is Lord Hermer right to call the British Empire deeply racist? Well, I'm joined now by historian and broadcaster Rafe Heidel-Manku and Dr. Sami Pinabasi. Hello, gentlemen. How are we doing tonight? We've got a big topic to talk about here, but is this the left? Rafe, I'll start with you. Is this the left trying to rewrite history through their ideological lens?
Absolutely. It's no surprise also that the Attorney General has been linked to the Chagos deal that you were just describing, because, a lot of people don't understand why we're giving away the Chagos Islands. The reason is it's steeped and drenched in the same sort of far left anti-imperial, post-colonial ideology that we see here in the contemptible position being taken by the Attorney General, who, quite frankly, I think should resign. He's clearly working against the British interest. You just have to look at his representation of everyone from Gerry Adams to Shamima Begum to, you know, one of the mothers of the ISIS Beatles. And it's quite clear here, this is a war on our history. Look, children in our schools are already taught the evils of empire. They don't get taught anything else but the negative side. And nobody is denying that there were certainly horrors and atrocities committed by the British Empire. But if you compare the British Empire to every other empire, white and non-white, you will see that actually it was the most benign. He talks about the legacy of violence of the British Empire. The fact is, it was remarkable how few troops, how few British officials actually used in governing the empire. It was largely governed by consent, something you don't find anywhere else. The real legacy of the British Empire is the fact that wherever you go in the world, the countries that are most stable, most productive, most democratic are those that have a British colonial inheritance. These countries have a higher quality of life thanks to the British Empire. You know, the British Empire brought the parliamentary system, the judiciary, built hospitals, schools, universities, the rule of law, the civil service, military and police structures. These are global players now because of their British colonial inheritance. That's their legacy. The British Empire in India increased the population of India from 170 million to 450 million during the Raj because it ended famines there, showed them about ways of storage techniques for food and so forth, medicine, improved the lives of people. We need to teach the good and the bad of the British Empire, and all we're getting these days is the bad.
Yeah, Dr. Pinabasi, that's a good point. We seem to be obsessed with the bad things about the British Empire. When do we ever talk about the good things? Is this just comments from Lord Irma very out of touch?
No, I mean, it's great to have a government minister finally talking about the legacies of empire. I mean, it's just cultural hokum to say that the empire was all good and there's nothing bad happened. And I mean, many countries developed the rule of law, parliamentary system without being part of the British Empire. So it's funny to see these Tory politicians having a collective meltdown over empire when the founder, the person who created the Conservative Party himself, Sir Robert Peel, was one of the most prominent pro-slavery supporters in Parliament. So it's like the murderers returning to the scene of the crime, that they're defending empire. They have a history of defending empire. Racism was foundational to the development and existence of the British Empire. Whichever century you look at, from the 17th to the 20th century, racism is a through line regarding the history of empire. There's a consensus among historians, among mainstream historians at least, that the empire was in fact racist. It was racist from the 17th century until the 20th century. There may not have been a coherent racist ideology in the beginning of empire, but by the late 19th century, there was a developed coherent racist ideology which underpinned empire. I'm a historian of slavery, for example, and so slavery helped develop the British Empire, and that itself was racist. So it's hard to really argue that it wasn't racist, and just cultural hokum. Yeah.
I'll pass it back to you, Rafe. I mean, obviously strong words there from Dr. Pinabasi about racism being rife in the British Empire and that we sort of drove it. What do you say to that?
Look, there was undeniably a hierarchy of races as far as many Victorians were concerned. That was just a fact of the time. That was accepted science. What people don't realise enough, I think, is that they weren't in complete dominance and control of the British Empire. The second half of the British Empire, you had the influence of the Christian humanitarians. They were the ones behind the abolition of slavery, the first empire in the world to abolish slavery. Remember, there were more Africans held in bondage in Africa by other Africans than were ever transported across the Atlantic Ocean. Remember about the racism you found in Africa, for example, with the treatment of the pygmies and so forth, let alone the attitudes towards Africans from the Islamic empires, or indeed today you find it in Asia and so forth. But the Victorian Christian humanitarians believed that all peoples were equal. And what's amazing about this is that if you look, whenever there was an atrocity committed on very rare occasions, such as the Amritsar massacre, who was outraged? The British people. and British politicians. Just look at how Churchill responded when he found out about the Amritsar massacre, the rogue general involved in shooting some Sikhs. He was stripped of his role, stripped of all his pension. It was called one of the greatest atrocities. You don't find any parallels of that in other empires, especially not with non-white empires. The fact is, obviously things like slavery were horrendous, but the legacy of the British Empire was the fact that we stopped barbaric practices around the world. We stopped the human sacrifice in the kingdom of Dahomey, where thousands of slaves were sacrificed every year. We stopped female genital mutilation in East Africa. We stopped the burning of Hindu widows on the funeral pyres of their husbands, passed legislation to stop infanticide of young Indian girls, allowed Hindu widows to remarry. We did so much around the world, and that needs to be recognized. And no one is saying that there were no bad things, as my interlocutor just said there. We're acknowledging the bad. We need to acknowledge the good.
Yeah, well, Pinabazi, last word to you then. Do you not think that Rafe's got a point? There are some very good things the British Empire did for people all over the world, including building infrastructure, among the other things that Rafe said. Of course, Lord Herm has called for reparations before. Do you think Britain owes reparations?
Yeah, I mean, I do. You're talking about building infrastructure. That infrastructure was built to benefit the British Empire and capitalists
but it's benefiting by them now.
Well, that's like an ancillary benefit. I mean, they didn't build it to think, oh, we're going to build this to help the black and brown people. They built it to help to make the empire more efficient and to make the extractive nature of empire more efficient. And a lot of the humanitarians that my interlocutor also talks about were in fact racist. You could be an abolitionist and be racist at the same time. Lots of them were motivated by white supremacy and the idea that they could Christianize and indeed civilize these so-called natives. And also in the 17th century, for example, British colonists would send back body parts of indigenous people as good luck charms. So there's savagery. I mean, it really depends on how we define savagery. That's just my opinion. Anyway.
If the British Empire was
sorry,
racist,
Rafe, I'm sorry I have to end it there, guys. Doctors, thank you very much for coming on. I'm sure you'll have a chance to go head-to-head again very soon. Thank you, gentlemen. Coming up, Keir Starmer's cabinet has reportedly held a series of private meetings today. Do we have the right to know when such things happen? Do you think the public should know about this? I'll look forward to your comments on that. But next, another week for Reform UK. A bombshell new poll puts a Tory Reform coalition at the top of the list of probabilities. Could this ever happen? Next, I'm joined by a Reform councillor who is ticked off for simply wanting to discuss Sick Note Britain as well. This is Patrick Christie's Tonight, only on GB News with me, Alex Armstrong.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
A wet start to this weekend in Mallorca, but the rain should be clearing from the Balearics by Sunday. Plenty of showers to come across Italy. Lots of fine and sunny weather over the Greek islands. A bit of a chilly breeze, though, blowing here across Turkey and Cyprus. Some wet weather, as I said, across Italy and the south of France, looking pretty soggy. That rain clearing away from the Balearics. Plenty of sunshine across the Canaries. That should last through the weekend into the early part of next week. Sunny on Sunday in Barcelona.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Heading towards the weekend, still plenty of cloudy skies, also some showers and a little bit of hill snow, and it's still going to be remaining chilly in those brisk easterly winds. That's all thanks to an area of high pressure across Scandinavia, bringing us this brisk easterly flow. So it is going to be feeling chilly in the winds, and it is dragging in some cloud, also some rain and some showers across the southeast, pushing up into Wales and central parts of the UK. And this is likely to bring some snow across the hills of Wales, perhaps even the Pennines later in the morning. But a slightly different story to the northwest, clearer and drier here, likely to see some frost during the first part of the morning. Now, for the beginning of the weekend across the south, it could be quite a damp start for some, with some showers, these merging into longer spells of rain, particularly across parts of East Anglia and the southeast. So quite a murky start to the day, perhaps a few clearer spells across Cornwall. And similar across Wales, northern parts of England, quite a cloudy start, but clearer to the northwest of Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland. But here, that's where we're going to see the frost. And we will start to see some showers just edging their way into eastern parts of Scotland too. Once again, we could see some winteriness to these showers, particularly across high ground in the hills of Scotland. And that's pretty much the setup for the rest of the day. Still a fair amount of cloud around. It could be quite drizzly at times. Still a chance we could see some flurries of snow across high ground in Wales, parts of the Pennines, and the best of the brightness once again to the far northwest of the country. But for all, it is still going to be feeling like a chilly day, particularly in exposed spots in those brisk winds. For the second half of the weekend, once again, plenty of cloud around, but the best of the brightness still across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps less so across parts of Wales. For many, it's going to be a cloudy day, some drizzle at times, and still a very small chance we could see some winteriness across the hills. And that cloud sticks around for the beginning of next week too, and that means temperatures are going to struggle, so still feeling rather chilly. Bye-bye.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. A Reform UK councillor has been reprimanded by a council watchdog after making comments about sick note culture. During a security panel meeting last month, Oliver Freeston, who represents North East Lincolnshire, claimed anxiety and depression were used by some people as an easy way out to claim out of work sickness benefits. Following the meeting, he was told in an email by a council team member to moderate and temper his language. And Mr. Freeston has since accused the council of council politics, branding the message an attack on free speech. Well, I'm joined now by North East Lincolnshire Councillor for Reform UK, Oliver Freeston. Oliver, welcome. Thank you for coming on the show tonight to talk about your story. How about you just give us the account of what happened to you in your own words?
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me. As a keen GB News listener, it's honestly an honour to be on here. So at the recent council meeting, I was told off by a council officer for saying that the sick note culture had began, that the new bad back was anxiety and depression. People would now go to their GP and they would say, I've got anxiety and depression. We all know that the GPs are overstretched and they award the sick notes, and people are then on a life of benefits. Indeed, we have second, third generation of families on out of work benefits that haven't worked a day in their life, and it's not something that can continue. I think what's really important to point out is that there are those with genuine case of mental health that they get ignored, they get stigmatized. You have people in the armed forces, the veterans coming out, they can't access support because the resources are being directed elsewhere. We've got to get real on mental health, and it's a conversation that I'm glad is now being had, and hopefully it will lead to lasting change.
Yeah, Oliver, you know, do you think, I take your words quite well, I think that I agree with you on those things, but do you think this action against you from this council watchdog is biased because you're a Reform councillor?
I don't really pay too much attention to it, to be quite truthful. I get on with council officers, I get on with councillors. If they have a problem with what I say, then tough luck. I'm going to keep saying it. They didn't elect me, my constituents did, and that's what I'll keep doing. And I know I've got the support because I've had emails over the last couple of days from people not just in my area, but up and down the country, taking the time to find my email address and say, we're right behind you. Even those that have lost loved ones, but they know that we're right, that it's we're not focusing on those who have genuine cases. We're on about those who just don't want to work.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Oliver. I mean, look, so let's move on slightly, because I really want to get your thoughts as an elected councillor for Reform. Obviously, we've had the local elections scrapped in many places. I don't know whether your local association is going to be one of those places affected, but what do you make of this? Is this a plot by the Uni Party, the Tories and Labour sort of ganging up together to stop Reform's massive surge?
I'm afraid so. They're running scared. I mean, luckily for us, in my neck of the woods, we don't have elections until next year. But Lincoln County Council, which is nearby, them elections are going to go ahead, and I have real good confidence that we're going to take that. But the sad thing is that the elections that have been cancelled in Sussex, in Suffolk, Essex, in Norfolk, that's where we've got a few Reform MPs elected. Seems a little bit coincidental to me. Why are they scared of holding the MPs that were recently elected to account? I know it's a council election, but we know that council elections are impacted on national politics.
True.
So surely, if Labour and the Conservatives were confident, they'd want to hold the newly elected Reform MPs to account and showed it wasn't just a fluke. But they know full well that we are here to stay, and we're saying what everybody thinks.
Yeah, are you seeing a big surge of support in your area? Do you think you'll get an increase on your majority perhaps next time round, Oliver?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the polls show that for starters, but also when I'm going out and about, even just walking the dog or going shopping, people are showing an awful amount of support. People are, you're the Reform guy, you're a young lad, you're doing well. People are right behind me, and it's people who have never been interested in politics before. And that's the really great thing, is it's just ordinary people who care about the country. They want common sense restored, and issues like this that I'm bringing up, it really resonates well with people, because everybody knows that next door neighbour or that person who you used to go to school with, who you're getting up in the morning at 6 a.m. to go to work and you're paying for it, yet they're living a better life than you. It's absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
You know, they make it so work doesn't pay.
Yeah, well, obviously there's a lot of local by-elections held yesterday. I think there was 6 in total. Reform, I believe, won 3 of them. That's 50%. Do you think there was expectations for Reform to sort of keep sweeping and winning all these by-elections, or do you think they're missing something? Perhaps maybe some more policies? Do you think Reform needs to buckle down on those?
By-elections are really difficult because there's a lot of context behind it. Of course, local issues are really going to make a difference. So it's difficult for me to really comment on that. What I would say is that for a party to win 3 out of 6 by-elections, 50%, I'd say we're doing pretty well. And the future's bright. We're only going to get stronger as the branches get stronger, as more and more members join. The future's bright.
Well, look, I mean, we're talking, of course, as well today about this potential coalition. Tory and Labour are still very, very strong, of course. You know, we're seeing them neck and neck with Reform. Of course, there's a lot of breakthrough on Reform side, but many would argue that Labour and the Tories are going to hold on in the long run and that Reform's just a protest party, right?
I disagree completely. I mean, you look at the Find Out Now polling, put us on 29%, put the Tories down at 18%. They are plummeting. Labour are plummeting. The only party on the up is Reform. And it's not just Find Out Now. YouGov, reputable poll, that's putting us 3 or 4 points ahead of the Tories. Nobody wants Labour, nobody wants the Tories, and that's why they're taking the votes away from us, depriving 5.5 million people of voting, because they know people are fed up with the establishment and they know where to put the cross next time around. I think last time in the general election, there was a few problems with candidates. There was a worry that are the Reform ready to govern? But now I think we're showing that we've got the candidates, we've got the party structures, we've got the members. People are taking us as a serious party now.
OK, well, Oliver, look, that's all we've got time for. Thank you for coming on the show tonight. That was Reform UK councillor from North East Lincolnshire, Oliver Freeston. This week, Sir Keir Starmer scrapped reforms designed to end Britain's sick note culture. It was a Conservative announcement made last year. Also, coming up, we've got a Southeast Asian country is carrying out mass deportations. They have removed 800,000 illegal migrants since 2023. And when you find out where this is happening, you will be shocked. Next, Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet has reportedly held a series of private meetings. Do we think the public have a right to be made aware of those meetings? I'll be joined by a former senior member of Tony Blair's cabinet, Geoff Hoon. Just a moment, I'm Alex Armstrong, and this is Patrick Christie's Tonight on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ironic article in The Guardian, Nick, caring about facts.
Yeah, this is Meta is ushering in a world without facts, says Nobel Peace Prize winner. And they just seem to give these Nobel Peace Prizes to anyone these days. So it's Maria Ressa.
Not working.
Zuckerberg came out, and it was very bold. He said a few things. We're going to use community notes instead of fact-checkers. Fact-checkers in inverted commas, it just means people pushing usually a specific viewpoint. Community notes seems to be a great system that X uses, so why not do that? I think that's great. He's going to reduce restrictions on topics like immigration and gender. Good, because I'm against censorship. He's going to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more, which is great. He's also moving content moderation to Texas instead of California, which is banter. So now the cynical version is he's just realises we've got a new regime, it's the MAGA era, and I want to be mates with Trump, who said that I should that if I interfere with the 2024 election, he should spend the rest of his life in prison. So he did mention he might be a bit scared of that. He was involved in that in Facebook suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and I feel that he didn't like being a part of all that from watching interviews.
And also the suppression of arguments about gender and sex, what is biological sex and whatnot. You get banned for saying there are two sexes.
They're on the wrong side of this, and now he's correcting. But the weird thing is the people, of course, the people who don't like this, the lefties, this person, Ressa, is saying that this is a big problem. It's an extremely dangerous time. I've seen all this from the lefties. They just call it disinformation. They're worried about this because to them it's disinformation. To other people it's information.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we can all agree if people think they're getting their facts just directly from Facebook, then something's horribly wrong. But we know that. The community notes thing, I think, is quite good because that sort of first-hand experience people are putting down, aren't they?
Yeah. People have loads of different views come together, and it's an aggregate, so that's why it works.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. The Prime Minister gathered his cabinet for a secret 6-hour crisis summit. Well, I'm dubbing it that anyway. That was away from Downing Street earlier on today amid growing concerns that a state of stagflation will force tax hikes and spending cuts. Well, it's understood Starmer told ministers they could either be disruptors or the disrupted, whilst also taking aim at right-wing populists who claim to be on the side of working people but could only offer grievances, not solutions. There you go. It was expected that the Prime Minister's inner circle would also address the stalling Chagos deal and the looming threat of Reform UK. I wonder why. Well, that says Reform UK, of course, are growing massively in the polls. Joining me now is former Labour Defence Secretary Geoff Hoon. Geoff, welcome on board. Now, listen, maybe it's useful for our audience to know, why do governments have these secret meetings? Because they have had them, of course. We had one in November as well, is that right?
I really think you're overreacting, if you don't mind me saying so, on a Friday evening. I think you've probably overinterpreted what is a normal event for Cabinet, which is that there was a regular Cabinet meeting, as I understand it, followed by a political Cabinet. Happens all the time.
Well, look, I mean, the reason why people are speculating, Geoff, I mean, obviously, of course, having a secret meeting without publishing notes, well, I know they have now, of course, but that raises questions, and that's obviously amid very grim Bank of England forecasts that came out yesterday. We've got a civil war going on with Ed Miliband forcing to U-turn on Heathrow, which I'm sure he wasn't happy about, and of course, we've got Chagos chaos.
Well, hang on a second. When you talk about secret meetings, the reality is until relatively recently, certainly in my time, perhaps not in yours, no one knew what happened in Cabinet at all. It was Richard Crosman who blew the lid on Cabinet discussions by publishing his diaries. Up until then, no one really knew what was happening. We live in a different world from that, I accept, and the reality is now people do know what takes place in Cabinet, but it's not always a healthy thing for all of the discussions to be aired in public. I know Tony Blair, for example, was always furious that he'd hold a cabinet meeting and then read about what was happening in that edition of the Evening Standard, even before he'd left the meeting sometimes. And I think the reality is that there needs to be a balance. Obviously,
okay. Well, Jeff, we have a cabinet office. There's a meeting room that cabinet takes place in. Why not have it there then? Just have it as a normal cabinet meeting. Why the secrecy? Why the moving of location?
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know the answer to that, tell you the truth, because I'm, no longer part of it. I imagine, however, that it's probably a good idea, and lots of organisations do this, to get away from the normal place of work, to try and have a different atmosphere and a different experience. And lots of businesses do that. For example, lots of businesses that I've been involved with do that kind of thing every so often, just to give people a different experience. So it might be that. I don't know, in truth.
Well, let's have a look. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, said, he's got a tweet here, it seems odd to me that Sir Keir Starmer has ordered his cabinet to meet at a secret location today. The last Tory government never did this, even in its lowest moments. I can't imagine that a confident government, sure of itself, would do this either. And Labour's landslide was only 7 months ago. And it does raise questions. I understand what you're saying, Jeff. It does raise questions there. But, you've been in cabinet. Tell us why. Did you have these during, you were Defence Secretary during the war in Iraq. Would you have them around those sorts of issues? Is that what you would use a secret cabinet meeting for?
No, we wouldn't. What happened today, as I understand it, is that there was a regular cabinet, and issues like Iraq and similar day-to-day issues would have been discussed in full cabinet in time. Thereafter, what appears to have taken place is a political cabinet. And again, Conservative prime ministers have had those kinds of occasions, and Labour ones as well. Certainly, when I was in the cabinet, that happened from time to time, and it's perfectly normal aspect of cabinet government because in the end, it is necessary for the politicians around the table, and bear in mind that cabinet ministers are first and foremost politicians, to have that kind of political discussion, a strategy session perhaps, a discussion about the way things are going, and that's a perfectly normal part of cabinet government.
Oh, all right. Well, would you say that these secret meetings, or whatever, these secret cabinet meetings, don't you think the public really has a right to know what their elected officials say? What's the purpose of having a closed behind-the-door cabinet meeting which is funded by the taxpayer?
I was saying earlier that I think then it needs to be a balance. I accept rightly that in a democracy, people are entitled to know what senior figures in their country who are taking decisions about the future direction of that country, they're entitled to know what's happening. At the same time, the other side of that coin is that we have something called collective cabinet responsibility. Whilst there are discussions inside cabinet, and obviously people feel strongly because these are our most senior representatives in the government, people have strong views and they air those views, but they do reach a decision. And what has to happen in cabinet government is that all members of cabinet, whether they've been on one side of the argument or the other, have to accept that collective responsibility. And that's important. And therefore, knowing precisely who said what, on what occasion, and how strongly somebody felt isn't really necessarily helpful in collective cabinet responsibility. And whilst we have that as a principle of our government, and that has been the case for hundreds of years, then the reality is that it is important that those private conversations, those private deliberations and discussions are respected.
Yeah. Look, I want to just go back to this point about it being a bit odd. Look, Keir Starmer is up against it. His approval ratings are through the floor. I think they're minus 45 net at the moment. Of course, there's lots of infighting. There's talks amongst, Labour sources of potential challenges down the line to Keir Starmer. The press are playing that up as well. Does he need to have these in secret so he can get his ministers and his secretaries of state in line in case he's worried about them rebelling against him? This is quite a tenuous time for him, is it not?
I don't accept that. All governments have highs and lows. All governments have ups and downs, and that's part of the nature of the job. And I'm sure he understands that better than anyone. I've seen that happen in cabinet. I've seen it happen in other people's cabinets when I've watched a Conservative government. These things come and go. But the reality is it is important to have these kinds of strategy sessions where you work out not just what you're doing today or next week, where you think through the longer term issues.
Yeah, but I want to go back to Christopher Hope's point here, because he said, this is a man who's very connected into politics and what goes on at the top levels of Downing Street. He said the Tories never did this, never in their darkest days. Why would Keir Starmer, push for this when the Tories never even did it themselves?
Well, I'm sure that, first of all, that the Conservatives had political cabinets, either separately or as part of a longer cabinet meeting. I'm sure that took place. I know it did. I certainly read about it in the way that you probably did at the same time. What we're debating really is where this particular event took place. And I've already said, I don't know where it took place. I don't know why it took place away from the normal places of business. I would suggest that it was simply an effort to try and give people a different atmosphere, a different experience, in order that they are away from their normal place of work.
Sorry to cut you off. We've got to go there. Thank you very much for your time, Geoff Huhne, there, ex-Labour Defence Minister. Upcoming next, we've got a big monologue tonight at 10 o'clock. You're not going to want to miss this. I'm telling you which South Asian country is deporting hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants while we do nothing. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss it.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Heading towards the weekend, still plenty of cloudy skies, also some showers and a little bit of hill snow, and it's still going to be remaining chilly in those brisk easterly winds. That's all thanks to an area of high pressure across Scandinavia, bringing us this brisk easterly flow. So it is going to be feeling chilly in the winds, and it is dragging in some cloud, also some rain and some showers across the southeast, pushing up into Wales and central parts of the UK. And this is likely to bring some snow across the hills of Wales, perhaps even the Pennines later in the morning. But a slightly different story to the northwest, clearer and drier here, likely to see some frost during the first part of the morning. Now, for the beginning of the weekend across the south, it could be quite a damp start for some, with some showers, these merging into longer spells of rain, particularly across parts of East Anglia and the southeast. So quite a murky start to the day. Perhaps a few clearer spells across Cornwall, and similar across Wales, northern parts of England, quite a cloudy start, but clearer to the northwest of Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland. But here, that's where we're going to see the frost, and we will start to see some showers just edging their way into eastern parts of Scotland too. Once again, we could see some winteriness to these showers, particularly across high ground in the hills of Scotland. And that's pretty much the setup for the rest of the day. Still a fair amount of cloud around. It could be quite drizzly at times. Still a chance we could see some flurries of snow across high ground in Wales, parts of the Pennines, and the best of the brightness once again to the far northwest of the country. But for all, it is still going to be feeling like a chilly day, particularly in exposed spots in those brisk winds. For the second half of the weekend, once again, plenty of cloud around, but the best of the brightness still across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps less so across parts of Wales. For many, it's going to be a cloudy day, some drizzle at times, and still a very small chance we could see some winteriness across the hills. And that cloud sticks around for the beginning of next week too, and that means temperatures are going to struggle, so still feeling rather chilly. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but two chances to win this month, with two prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive?
incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good evening, it's 10 p.m. and this is Patrick Christie's Tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. And if you're just joining us, firstly, where have you been? And secondly, don't worry, Patrick will be back as usual on Monday. But as you know, I won't be holding back. Everyone is in the firing line tonight. Well, tonight on the show... Oh, no start? OK. While Britain bends over backwards for illegal migrants, one South Asian country is kicking them out in the hundreds of thousands. When you hear who it is, your jaw is going to hit the floor. Also, first they rewrote Roald Dahl. Now they're putting trigger warnings on Shakespeare for popping balloons. How much more of our culture will be sanitised? And I'm joined by my fantastic panel, Stephen Wolfe, Suzanne Evans and Susie Stride, who will be giving their expert opinions on all of tonight's top stories. And we'll also be taking a look at those tomorrow's headlines. Mass deportations are happening, just not here in Britain. Find out where next.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. Fast approaching 2 minutes past 10. The top story this hour. The government has confirmed that Grenfell Tower will be dismantled nearly 8 years after a fire killed 72 people. The process will take around 2 years and be done sensitively, with no changes made before June's anniversary of the disaster. The decision follows warnings that the damaged building is deteriorating and only remains stable due to protective measures. Local people and survivors, though, are divided. Some want the tower to remain as a memorial, while others say it's too distressing. Officials say key materials, though, will be preserved for a potential memorial if the community wishes. A man who murdered his partner's toddler after staying up late playing video games has been jailed for life today with a minimum term of 25 years. Christopher Stockton inflicted fatal head injuries on 22-month-old Charlie Roberts at their home in Darlington last January. The boy's mother, Paula Roberts, admitted neglecting the boy by failing to seek treatment for the injuries Stockton caused and was also jailed for 4 years. The judge said Stockton's actions were excruciatingly painful for the young boy and that only he knew why he inflicted the fatal blow. Detectives called it a heartbreaking case and urged people to report concerns about child welfare. In other news, Sir Keir Starmer has been chairing a so-called secret meeting today to tackle investment, reform and growth amid plummeting poll ratings and grim economic forecasts. It comes after the Bank of England slashed its growth forecasts, cut interest rates to 4.5% and warned of further drops in living standards. Donald Trump's tariff threats and global trade turmoil are also being blamed for the uncertainty. Authorities have arrested a second woman accused of using wigs and disguises to fraudulently sit the UK citizenship test for 12 other people. The 42-year-old was detained during a raid in Kent where officers found multiple wigs and suspected fake documents. Another woman in her 20s was arrested after allegedly hiding under a bed to evade detection. Authorities say the scam could allow people to unlawfully gain the right to remain in the UK. Both suspects remain in custody as investigations continue. Royal News and the King and Queen have been hosting a very special black-tie dinner tonight at Highgrove to celebrate Italian cuisine. They've been joined by stars including Victoria and David Beckham, Donatella Versace and Stanley Tucci. Guests enjoyed a feast featuring British-sourced ingredients like Scottish crab and Isle of Wight tomatoes. Tucci, a well-known foodie, inspired the menu, which embodied the slow food philosophy that Charles has long championed. Martinis, also made with herbs from Highgrove Garden, were served alongside the meal. And the event also highlighted sustainable slow fashion, with students showcasing their garment skills. Who knew? And a cold snap is sweeping in, with temperatures set to plunge as low as -7 degrees in Scotland over the coming days. A yellow weather warning is in place across much of the UK, with snow expected in northern England and Wales. The Met Office says demand for healthcare is also likely to rise. But thankfully, a return of the dreaded beast from the east is unlikely. That's after Scotland recently recorded temperatures of almost -19 degrees Celsius, though it's not expected to get quite that cold this time. That's the news on GB News. One last roundup from me in an hour. Now, though, it's over to Alex.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. Well, how much more humiliation do you think this country can take? Well, I'm glad most of you will be sitting down watching this tonight, because what I'm going to tell you is infuriating. A country in South Asia has deported more than 800,000 illegal migrants, mostly from Afghanistan. 800,000. This is part of their illegal foreigners repatriation plan, which declared that all undocumented foreigners currently living in the country will be, and have been, sent back to their respective countries. Now, that country is Pakistan. Yeah, you heard that right. Pakistan. Despite outcry from international bodies, their government has pushed ahead and stuck two fingers up to those bodies and said, no, this is our country. We will do what we want. Now, let's compare that with our once Great Britain. And just today, we learned a Pakistani paedophile who preyed on barely pubescent girls has been granted the right to stay here in the UK. The man, named only as MH to protect his privacy, told the tribunal hearing that he started grooming young girls in March 2021 when his wife was hospitalised with COVID-19. Now, despite being told he would be deported with one unsuccessful appeal, the second appeal to a specialist judge was accepted in June last year. Now, this judge ruled that removing him from the country would be unduly harsh because he would have significant difficulties in Pakistan, where his family would take a dim view of his sick crimes. Well, the Home Office, of course, have now said they will appeal this decision, and why should they have to at all, frankly? It's just basic common sense. Should there even be a debate about this? Why wasn't he immediately deported? Why are we, me and you, paying for foreign paedophiles to stay on taxpayer pounds in our prisons whilst they're overflowing? But wait, it gets better. Or should I say worse? Remember that Albanian drug dealer who was caught with enough narcotics to knock out a small village? Well, he's still here, thanks to his right to a family life. Or what about the Nigerian who fleeced our elderly out of their life savings? Well, he got asylum because deporting him would be unduly harsh, as his wife could not access IVF. Oh, and the Jamaican drug dealer who was jailed 5 times. Well, he also avoided deportation. The judge claimed that his mixed-race children would have unmet emotional needs linked not just to the loss of a parent, but to the loss of a parent who represents half of their cultural identity. It was therefore judged unduly harsh as well, not to deport him, even though those kids witnessed him beating their mother. And let's not forget that Syrian national, sentenced to 10 years in prison for robbery and 2 years for possession of a firearm, who's still walking our streets because of risks he might face back home. Our justice system, from top to bottom, is an absolute shambolic international embarrassment. It's evident to me that we care more about the safety and reputation of foreign criminals than the safety of our own citizens. It seems like every other day there is another case where the UK bends over for foreign offenders. When will politicians and judges in this country grow a spine and start safeguarding us from these predators, attacking innocent citizens and targeting our children? I genuinely do not care where you come from. But if you come to this country, respect the law, respect our culture. If you can't do that, leave or be forced to leave. End of. Simple. And if Pakistan can have mass deportations of illegal migrants and foreign criminals, why can't we? Aren't we meant to be Great Britain? Deport those who break our laws, who endanger our society. Stop Britain from becoming this constant dumping ground for the world's criminals. But let's get the thoughts of my panel. We've got political consultant Suzanne Evans, Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, and Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Look, this news that Pakistan is deporting, or has deported 800,000 Afghanis. It puts us to shame, doesn't it, Stephen?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it puts most countries in Europe to shame. And I think when you look at that, bearing in mind, and I do admit, that Pakistan hosts the most illegal migrant camps of any country in the world, and it's supported by the UN in that, it's clear to them that they can't accept those level of numbers. But then we only have to look across what Donald Trump has managed to achieve in just a few weeks.
Yeah.
We're already seeing Colombia come back and accept 20,000. We're looking at 80,000 down in Mexico. We're seeing the borders being controlled. He has had literally no one illegally crossing the borders since he's arrived. And all that shows to us is if there is political will, if the institutions that have prevented control of our migration, which are the civil servants, the NGOs and their trade union movements supporting them too, cease to have any effect on politicians with real will, then you can get this on control.
Yeah.
Our research shows that already this year, the people smugglers have roughly made around £20 million just in the January period.
Incredible.
This year alone. That's where the profit margins go. Pakistan are leading. America's taking it on. We should be doing the same.
Well, Susie, just want to come to you on this because obviously, you know, Labour's in power now. We've seen deportations actually go up, which is good. I don't know why the Tories didn't do it for 14 years, but I welcome any progress in this area. The reality is we're still getting judges today blocking this decision. What's stopping them?
Well, no, I mean, like, when you actually look at this story, I think it has now been appealed.
The Home Office is appealing it.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously, I mean, it is ridiculous. You've got to be absolutely tough on. Well, you've got to be tough on all crime. Let's be honest. But I mean, this is a crazy story, a ridiculous story.
There's loads of them.
Yeah,
loads of them.
But I think it is important to say that that deportations have actually gone up. I think I'm just reading like 23% they've gone up by. You know, and actually Yvette Cooper is being tough on this, and I think, you know, we are seeing, you know, a bit more of a tougher stance. But ultimately, look, I think the British public look at this and they just think this is madness, this is a disgrace. You know, you hear those stories and again you just think this is madness, this is a disgrace. And I hope that we continue to see those deportations increase because, you know, it doesn't matter whether it sends the wrong message, it's wrong. You know?
Yeah. Suzanne, I mean, look, the Tories had 14 years to sort this out. The British public again and again and again said, we want lower migration, we want you to get tougher on crime. The party of law and order. What happened?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? You know, we vote for politicians. Just about every political party that's been in power in the course of my lifetime has said, well, certainly since Tony Blair in the 1990s, has said they're going to reduce immigration.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. And this nonsense, you know, part of the reason Britain is great is because we have such a good legal system. That's why we're recognised throughout the world. That's why people come and do business here, because they know that they've got the rule of law and that there are contracts that will be abided to and the courts will rule rightly. But yet when it comes to this particular issue of migration and foreign criminals, it's like, oh, the lefty lawyers come out and there's this complete blind spot and they won't get rid of them.
I can't... and
it's too depressing for words.
Stephen, tell me if I'm mad here, but how are these judges getting to these conclusions? I mean, if you lose your first appeal, why do you even have this entitlement to constantly appeal and appeal and appeal until you find a judge that gives you what you want?
Well, it's the way that and the nature of our common law. As someone who is a barrister who actually looks at immigration law, the way that we have this is that our common law has allowed the judgments of the European Courts of Human Rights to come into, and what that's done is expanded the principles of the UNHCR, the basic principle of asylum, has now been allowed to effectively come in and bring in your family members and have all these various excuses so that you can get a criminal who says, I've literally murdered people and not be allowed to be deported because of their right to family life. And there are various sections around that that's just been expanded and imported. And that's why I've always argued that if we want to get some sense back into our common law system of immigration, we have to remove ourselves from the European Courts of Human Rights. Right. We have to enact policies in Parliament that changes our common law to allow those elements to be removed so that these criminals can be deported. Deport, and it will lead to people not wanting to come here.
The problem, of course, is that the legal profession doesn't want this, because you will know, Stephen, that some of your colleagues make an absolute fortune appealing because of the ECHR.
The appeals will make them more money, and you've got legal aid.
Lawyers, I'm afraid, don't want it. They are part of the problem.
Yeah,
these judges are part of the problem.
200 million on legal aid.
Absolutely.
I think lefty lawyers have gone running wild in this country.
Well, they have. I'm not sure we keep calling them lefty lawyers. It's just lawyers, let's be honest. You're just saying that lawyers want to make money from that. I'm pretty sure that's not just lefty lawyers. I'm pretty sure there's a few righty lawyers that are making money from it. You know, I think, look, let's just see. Labour been in 8 months. It's not even, I mean, is it even 8 months? You know, we've just got in, and they're already turning this around a bit. Let's just see what's going to happen here. You know,
19 days. 19 days. Look at what he's managed to achieve in 19
Well, look. Okay, and that's fine. You know, and maybe we'll come on to Trump later. I'm sure Trump is effective at certain things, but I don't agree with some of the bully tactics that he uses on other things.
They work.
However, you know, we are turning this around. I mean, even the fact that Keir Starmer's putting up videos of people being deported, you wouldn't see. You know, the Tories weren't doing that, were they? Immigration were tripled.
To give him credit where
exactly.
I was going to say, but be careful about the way that you're saying this. A lot of these policies that are being used by the Labour Party now were actually conjured up under the time of Braverman and putting through in generic. That's one element. The deals that were done with other countries. And secondly, most of the deportations still are around crime, not related to those who've come across on boats. That's the action I want them to see to do. Deter, detain, deport.
So
that's the way forward.
Do you think that we're still sort of this, a lot of people call it the dumping ground of migrants, when the people are crossing the channel illegally still, there's no deterrence for them to stop them from coming here, is there? And that is Labour's duty to build an effective deterrence, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately we have inherited a terrible situation where, as I said, immigration... No, this is not about... No, you've got to diagnose the problem. The problem is that immigration trebled under the Tories, and they have a terrible track record on this. Again, we've been in for 8 months. You know, even some of the stuff that we're doing around, and I'm not saying it's all about clamping down on the gangs, but that is part of it. Part of it. So, look, you know, it's a massive problem. I think Yvette Cooper is taking it seriously, and also the bigger thing here is, you know, we will be punished at the polls if we do not deal with this.
I think so.
You know, and that's not the only reason to deal with it. There are other things. You can't have people dying in the Channel, but I don't, of course, the dumping ground of Europe, because I think this is the greatest country in the world. So I'm not going to call us that.
You'll also see what Braverman, in terms of Badenoch, has actually announced this week is actually quite transformative in terms of the language of the Conservative Party. Whether they'll actually mean to do it is a different thing, but that'll be a challenge to the Labour Party too.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, look, we're moving on now to the Great British Giveaway. We're giving you 2 chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's all the details you need.
The Great British Giveaway is officially 1 year old, and we have a birthday treat for you. We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck, everybody. Coming up, we've got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30 p.m. with full panel reaction. There's a huge story on the front page of the Telegraph. That'll be really interesting. Could Labour be about to hand out trillions of pounds in slavery reparations? It's a controversial front page, and it's coming up. And... yeah, what do you think happens next? I mean, I think it's relatively obvious. But next, the university slaps over 200 trigger warnings on classic Shakespeare plays. Are our institutions censoring our heritage? I'm Alex Armstrong, and we'll see you again after the break.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we're going to introduce you to Liam Wildish. Liam, well, I'd like to think he's a friend of mine because I follow him on Instagram, on TikTok there as well.
You're a big fan, aren't you?
Big fan, because there's what he does. He's a cleaner. He cleans signs. But the thing is, he's not employed by councils or whatever. He does this voluntarily. And you sort of think to yourself, well, who cleans these signs? Why have these signs been allowed to get into this terrible state of disrepair and filthiness?
So basically, long story short, about 6 years ago, I used to be a window cleaner. In the community where I lived, I noticed all of the road signs were filthy, and I was perfectly equipped to clean them. So basically, I cleaned the road signs as a bit of a thank you to the community and sort of make a little bit of awareness of my window cleaning business at the time. Yeah. Sort of cleans up the area, makes the road safer, and that's kind of how that started. And people found it like a really satisfying sort of approach. So that sort of led on to today of a video in cleaning the dirty road signs and making sort of satisfying content with it as well.
What is the equipment? What have we got here?
So this is a water-fed pole system connected to a backpack, which is what feeds the water through the end of the brush there. It's perfectly equipped to basically remove this green dirty, it's like a mildew build-up that you get on the signs. Yeah. As you can see, this is like extremely effective at removing so.
So GB News viewers, if they spot a particularly grisly sign in their area, then they can get in touch.
They can do, yeah.
And Liam Wildish, the sign guy, can sort you out.
if you find Liam the sign guy online, drop me a message, let me know, and I'll add you to my list of places.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. The University of West England has been slammed after putting over 200 bizarre trigger warnings on some of Shakespeare's greatest plays. Drama students at the university were warned about puppetry and pregnancy in The Winter's Tale and scenes of storms and extreme weather in none other than The Tempest. They were even told to beware of popping balloons in a particular 2016 performance. Why on earth are these precautions needed? Joining me now is Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, Philip Kisley. Hello, Philip. This is nuts, is it not? Are we not just sanitising our culture
Hi, Alex. Well, first of all, it's really nice to speak to you. Yes, it's first of all, it's making students stupid. It's making them demented. You know, it's taking dramas about conflict, so it's taking the very nature of conflict out of drama. But it's also something more than that. It's making Shakespeare, which is quintessentially English. That's our English. It's making it poisonous. It's slapping a warning on it. It's making it dangerous. It's almost like it's making it the pack of 20 cigarettes of culture. It's doing that to it. You know what I mean? So that's the immediate thing which says this kind of stuff is awful. And then that's framed with a broader process, which is called decolonization, as we know. Okay. And that removes Englishness from the curriculum. So it's a really horrible process. First of all, it dements people because it makes them hypersensitized to everything. But it's also doing something more sinister. And it's that second thing which is really problematic. And don't forget that these are drama students. In a few years' time, they're going to be the head of drama at the BBC. They're going to be the filmmakers. They're going to be making television, theatre, and all of that kind of stuff. If they're so stupid that they've been fed this diet of nonsense, then we know why television is so bad. We know why British film is so bad. It's what they're being taught.
Philip, do you think this is just university culture? You know, like, how is it penetrated into a place where you're meant to learn critical thinking? You know, you're meant to be able to be, you know, at least a little bit disturbed by the things you read. It can't all be, you know, softy. How has this happened to British universities?
This has been happening for a long time. I actually read drama at Manchester 20-odd. And I've taught in British universities over the last quarter of a century. So this is nothing new. This has been happening quite a long time. The thing is, we're seeing it now, and it's gone on steroids because it's gone mainstream, okay? And there's something to do with social media there. Everybody knows about this kind of stuff now. And the more people know about it, the more it burgeons, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not only the subjects, it's the broader culture. So, for example, okay, there was a few months ago, you might remember, some universities said to students and members of staff, they said, look, don't use the words mum and dad. Okay, because some people don't have a mum and dad, but also some people are from queer backgrounds, so it will be offensive to them to say mum and dad. So what's happening there is exactly the same thing. All of this stuff is connected. So by including marginal identities, they are excluding the great big centre, okay?
Yeah.
And we're seeing cross-culture. And of course, university is the place where this kind of stupidity really feeds on itself. Don't forget, last summer we had Hamas encampments, students supporting Hamas on university campuses up and down the country. So there's this mind virus which is nurtured at universities. It's very frightening. It's you know, we can laugh at it and we should laugh at it, but we have to call it out in a very serious way as well.
Yeah, I know many parents who might watch our shows and pay attention to this sort of stuff could be worried about their students, their children coming back brainwashed from being a student and also spending this massive amount of money getting into debt. Do you think there's a worry for parents now, thinking my son or daughter might come back from university and just have this radicalisation of their morals?
Yeah, I think it is. And we see that because people aren't going to university in the numbers that they used to.
Yeah.
Okay. So drama degrees in particular, arts, humanities and social science degrees, they're all falling by the wayside. The numbers are just massively down, mainly because people don't learn how to, if you're on a drama degree at a university, at a top university, you don't actually learn how to act or direct or screenwrite. You learn about critical race theory, you learn about feminism, you learn about the environment. Okay, so you learn about else, and none of it is critical at all. We have to ask ourselves who's put in charge here, who's slapping these trigger warnings on these great works of art, and you can bet your life it's going to be non-binary social justice warriors with blue hair and recasting the culture in their own figure. So people don't want that. The vast majority of British people do not want that. And people are not sending their children to university to learn this rubbish.
Yeah, Philip, you know, some people, of course, would argue that there's a duty to protect students and that actually, you know, times have changed and we do need to be more sensitive. There are students with trauma and they don't want to hear about specific topics, for example. Do you think that's a valid argument?
Well, no, I don't, because I think you have to expose people to reality. And I think if you create a false fantasy world in which people don't experience their own identity and they can't communicate with other people in an ordinary, natural way, then you're just building all of that trauma. You're not dealing with it, you're just making it worse.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Philip Kisley there from the New Culture Forum. Thank you for joining us today. Fascinating stuff, I'm sure a lot of parents may agree. But in defence of its decision to put trigger warnings on Shakespeare plays, the University of West England issued the following statement. Content warnings were previously requested by students with sensory processing issues and experiences of trauma. OK, coming up, there's another disturbing story about universities and we'll bring that to you shortly. And what happens next? I wonder. Who knows? Plus, there's a huge story on the front page of the Telegraph. This is a big one. Could Labour be about to hand out trillions of pounds in slavery reparations? It's a very controversial front page, and this is coming next. This is Patrick Christie's Tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. Don't go anywhere.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
A wet start to this weekend in Mallorca, but the rain should be clearing from the Balearics by Sunday. Plenty of showers to come across Italy. Lots of fine and sunny weather over the Greek islands. A bit of a chilly breeze, though, blowing here across Turkey and Cyprus. Some wet weather, as I said, across Italy and the south of France looking pretty soggy. That rain clearing away from the Balearics. Plenty of sunshine across the Canaries. That should last through the weekend into the early part of next week. Sunny on Sunday in Barcelona.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Heading towards the weekend, still plenty of cloudy skies, also some showers and a little bit of hill snow, and it's still going to be remaining chilly in those brisk easterly winds. That's all thanks to an area of high pressure across Scandinavia, bringing us this brisk easterly flow. So it is going to be feeling chilly in the winds, and it is dragging in some cloud, also some rain and some showers across the southeast, pushing up into Wales and central parts of the UK. And this is likely to bring some snow across the hills of Wales, perhaps even the Pennines later in the morning. But a slightly different story to the northwest, clearer and drier here, likely to see some frost during the first part of the morning. Now, for the beginning of the weekend across the south, it could be quite a damp start for some, with some showers, these merging into longer spells of rain, particularly across parts of East Anglia and the southeast. So quite a murky start to the day, perhaps a few clearer spells across Cornwall. And similar across Wales, northern parts of England, quite a cloudy start, but clearer to the northwest of Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland. But here, that's where we're going to see the frost. And we will start to see some showers just edging their way into eastern parts of Scotland too. Once again, we could see some winteriness to these showers, particularly across high ground and the hills of Scotland. And that's pretty much the setup for the rest of the day. Still a fair amount of cloud around. It could be quite drizzly at times. Still a chance we could see some flurries of snow across high ground in Wales, parts of the Pennines, and the best of the brightness once again to the far northwest of the country. But for all, it is still going to be feeling like a chilly day, particularly in exposed spots in those brisk winds. For the second half of the weekend, once again, plenty of cloud around, but the best of the brightness still across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps less so across parts of Wales. For many, it's going to be a cloudy day, some drizzle at times, and still a very small chance we could see some winteriness across the hills. And that cloud sticks around for the beginning of next week too, and that means temperatures are going to struggle, so still feeling rather chilly. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christie's tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. OK, we're going through your top headlines for tomorrow. Let's start with The Express. Reeves tax raid hurts British farms. They're leading, of course, with the Country File star Adam Henson backs Express crusade to protect farming families. And on to the Eye. We've got UK tax cuts for Musk, Zuckerberg and Bezos, likely price of tariffs with a deal with Trump. That's very interesting. These are the people surrounding Trump now. Interesting to see how we play on that one. Moving on to The Independent. Revealed plague of the e-bike mobile phone snatchers. Exclusive data obtained by this paper shows street thefts of mobile phones have doubled to 83,900 in 5 years. Incredible stuff. OK, The Guardian. Trump's aid cuts could be a big mistake, says David Lammy. I don't think there's any surprises there from David on that one. The Sun. OK, a bit of a different one here. Vile, rude and abusive, but ITV covered up for Gino. I'm doing one of these stories almost every single week now. It's getting pretty incredible. And then, of course, the Daily Telegraph, which we were telling you about earlier. Here it is. Labour to open talks on slavery payout. So Caribbean reparation team set for Foreign Office meeting after demands of, get this, £18 trillion. I mean, I don't think we can afford £18 billion, let alone 18
Can't afford 18 pence the way that this
Let me welcome back my fantastic panel, Suzanne Evans, Stephen Wolf, there and Susie Stride. OK, Susie, come on, we've got to start with you on this one.
Start with me. Start with me. Let's go for it.
Labour's open to talks on slavery payout, supposedly here. Obviously, I haven't fully read this story, but Foreign Office is in open talks on slavery reparations with the Caribbean officials demanding trillions of pounds from the UK. Where's this? We've got very pro.
Well, you know, look, the Telegraph can say whatever the Telegraph wants, but Keir Starmer has made it very, very clear that, you know, slavery was abhorrent. Horrific, but we need to look forward. You know, we're not going to look back. We're actually going to look forward. We're going to deal with the issues of now. It's far better, actually, with those countries to support them now with the issues they might be facing now. Very interesting. One of the things is they're going to set up a trade centre in the Foreign Office to see if there's ways of supporting those countries when it comes to business and trade. And that is absolutely right. So, you know, here you go, another right-wing newspaper spieling out some lies about what Labour aren't going to do. We aren't going to do this. Well done, the Telegraph.
Oh no, David Lammy has been demanding reparations for forever, as long as he's been a member of Parliament. So, my question to you, is this an example of David Lammy going off-piste? Have we got another Cabinet Minister here going against another Cabinet Minister and ignoring this idea of collective responsibility when they think of one? Because we've had Ed Miliband opposed to Rachel Reeves expanding Heathrow. We've had complaints too about, you know, his carbon capture programme. As I say, MPs are against that. So he's really been in the fire line. Have we got another sense of a split in the Cabinet?
No, it's not a split. I mean, this is life, isn't it? It's like in your family, you disagree on stuff. The Cabinet's a bit of a family, maybe a slightly strange family. They're going to disagree on stuff. That's called normal life.
It's a very strange family. He's got Lord Herman, which is one of his best friends as a lawyer, wants to have reparations. He's got Clive Lewis, our favourite Diane Abbott, all in there.
Not in the Cabinet.
Not in the Cabinet,
no.
not in the Cabinet.
I mean,
but
they're on the far left of the party. They're so far left.
They're so far left, they should have been left behind.
Well, there you go.
What I'm looking at is how will the British people want to look and pay for this? You've just talked about 18 trillion. Our current debt is 2.7 trillion. That means we're paying roughly around 184 billion a year. If we wanted to add this debt, we're up to 816 billion. To each individual in this country, we'd now have to pay out £250,000. And the NHS, 4 times the cost of the NHS to give it to Barbados. And will we get a free holiday to Barbados out of it?
Absolutely.
I doubt
I don't think
it.
we'll be welcome back. But let me put this out there, right? Because I think, you know, there's a lot said about reparations all the time. And, of course, it's fair for the Labour government. Many would say it's fair for them to explore, you know, and, you know, as Susie was saying, you know, try and work out how we can pay it back through trade. Maybe it's quite a clever deal from David Lamb. Maybe he's trying to spin it. Do you buy that, Suzanne?
Yeah, well, I've always said, you know, trade, not aid is the way to go. And absolutely, I've got absolutely no problem with doing trade deals all around the world. That's exactly what we should be doing post-Brexit. But perhaps there's another way we could pay for it. Maybe we could ask for reparations from France from 1066. Or we could ask for reparations from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, for the Viking invasion.
I want it from Rome. I want to be given a flat in Rome, and that'd be my reparations, is a flat in Rome that I can go every weekend, and the French can give me a flight.
You deserve that,
And I deserve it. The trauma. I do, and I am triggered every time I see a Roman film on there, thinking about the trauma of my family that they had to go to.
I think you can't look. Slavery was a very serious and an awful thing, and I think, you know, it's important to say that. But I think this is absolutely right. You know, Keir Starmer is spot on this. Well done, Keir. He's made it very clear. We're not going to look back. We're not going to pay reparations when it comes to. I mean, obviously, it's ridiculous. You can't be paying that tunes. But there are other ways of supporting these countries, and exactly. I mean, what a great idea! A trade centre that boosts economic ties with the Commonwealth. You know, that's absolutely the right way to go. And therefore, these things about we're going to spend money on that rather than hospitals, well, that becomes nonsense.
Yeah. OK, well, let's move on to something a little bit different. We're going to look at the Sun's front page here, because this has been spoken about quite a lot today. And this is, of course, we'll just read the headline again. Vile, rude and abusive, but ITV covered up for Gino. Now, obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of this story, and I don't want to speculate because it would be completely unfair on everybody. But, you know, this is this Kim Woodburn saying this? Saying there was cut scenes with Gino in... and she said she's made a lot of allegations, so I won't read them out on air. But you guys can see it tomorrow on the front page of the Sun. My question was going to be, do you think we're just getting obsessed with this cancel culture now? Or do you think now that people feel confident, women are feeling more confident to come out and actually say what they believe about these other celebrities they've worked with?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, isn't it? But again, what always worries me about these things is that you have a man named, there are all kinds of allegations made, his career is completely cancelled before he's been convicted of anything, not even accused or charged with anything, let alone convicted of anything. And I just find it deeply worrying. For all I know, Kim Woodburn's allegations may be true. They may not be true. She may have an axe to grind. She may not. Who knows the truth of this? But the fact is the media has already judged him and found him guilty. That worries me.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen, you may argue that the ITV have cut him because they have substantial evidence to say, actually, this was all true, and they don't want to go down this sort of grapevine and have the speculation. What would you say to that?
Again, I'm going to follow on with what Susanna just said there, is that as a lawyer, one would like to see the evidence, but the problem with the culture that we have today, and you just talked about it in your previous clip about cancelling 200 elements of Shakespeare, is what is the vile words that he said? I mean, did he sing the song Hey Gino? I don't know, from the 80s. I don't know what he was doing on there. But the difference in our language now, which was acceptable even last week, is very different to what it is today. And that's what I'm getting concerned about. And often, also, since the Me Too movement, there's been an awful lot of this element of charging somebody of having said something awful first, and then we find out later that it actually isn't as bad as it was.
I mean, look, I take a different point on that as a woman. I mean, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, you know, let's whatever. But the fact of the matter is, you know, there was a massive culture, I would say, in this country of things that would be inappropriate towards women, whether you're a woman that just goes to a club when I was at university or whatever, and people just got away with it. And what I love about the Me Too movement is the fact is it made men think twice about whether they could grab someone's whatever, you know, and get away with it.
Well,
so actually, I'm a big fan of that. I agree when it comes to things. I agree that what I don't like is sometimes what happens is allegations are thrown out, people are cancelled. That is very unfair, and we've seen sometimes that actually it's come out that actually these people didn't do anything wrong. what I'm happy with is that we have a high bar with how people are treated, whether it's bullying or whatever, and I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you get the right balance.
Well, I think the balance has swung negatively in some ways, and when we see in legal cases where we have men charged with rape on false allegations, but their names are already out there and the accusers aren't, and that's increasing.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously
increasing.
And I think there's also still a thing that, you know, it depends. There is so much bullying in society that is allowed. You know, Stephen and I, we know when we were fighting for Brexit, we got the most horrific bullying, and that was
stuff,
welcomed.
Yeah, well, it's not acceptable, and there should be, you know, I mean, I don't know how we're ever going to do this, but I hope and pray that we get proper regulation of social media. It doesn't mean you don't have free speech, but you don't allow bullying and abuse. And the fact is when you have that on social media, you basically start saying to school kids, you can behave that way in school, and it's got to change.
I think there's in my opinion, there's a delicate balance between what bullying is and what freedom of speech is, and where you police that, and how dangerous it is, how it can be weaponised by any government to lock people up or to put them in prison for saying, well, you bullied this person. I think there's a line. When it comes to abuse and violence and threats, I think the line is very clear to me. But let's maybe move on one more story very quickly. Let's look at the eye. UK tax cuts for Musk, Zuckerberg and Bezos, likely the price of tariffs deal with Trump. Now, obviously, Trump has claimed about, like the EU, for example, saying that they've slammed the EU. So the EU has slammed these companies, American companies, with lots of regulations and lots of fines. So are we expecting Britain to sort of be lumped in on that with the EU?
Yeah, I would say initially it would be, because there's a lot that's gone within the Trump camp that has seen what's happened in the United Kingdom and says that they're trying to move back towards the European Union. And they don't like it. They don't want it. And I can see that. And what they will give us as an opportunity to say, if you want to draw yourselves towards the European Union, Keir Starmer, if you want to get into the same sort of economic lines as them, then we're going to hit you with the tariffs. But if you don't, you step away, you move away from that sinking ship, then we might let you off. And that's where I see it.
I just want to say, I read this and I mean, this saddens me greatly. We're talking about some of the wealthiest people. I just visited Hawaii a couple of months ago. Hawaii on a little trip a couple of months ago. I was in no. But anyway, once in a lifetime holiday. I don't do everything. But the point is Zuckerberg owns half the island.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about some of the richest. Well, exactly. Put her in the bracket as well. We're talking about some of the richest people in the world asking for tax cuts. You want to talk about something that's going to annoy, let me keep my language in the right place, working class people, it's that the richest people shouldn't be paying their fair share of tax and not properly regulated.
I'm sorry, I'd love to bring you in. Maybe we'll get a chance after the break. But coming up, the rest of tomorrow's front page headlines, and we've got one from the Times. Are UK universities being bribed into pushing diversity? Find out more after the break. This is Patrick Christie's Tonight.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Estelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This was thought to be a Ruskin. Ruskin was a very considerable polymath, an artist as well as many other things. So do you know why it was submitted for reappraisal? Was there a bit of a suspicion that it had been misidentified?
No, as you say, you know, it's a service that Christie's offer. You can submit an artwork that you have, so anyone can submit it and request an estimate, and then the auction house's appraisal service allows you space as well to describe it and ask for evaluation. And Christie's sort of looked at it behind the sheet of dirty old glass and recognised a sort of Turner-esque mood and feel and ambience about it. And because there was this close relationship between Ruskin and Turner, which is fascinating, we'll come on to that shortly, but they sort of felt, well, the brushstrokes are very strong, the line is very economic, and the colour of the palette seems to be rather Turner-esque. And then they called in a specialist paper historian who confirmed that actually the paper that was used was one that Turner favoured himself. So yes, it was originally considered to be by Ruskin, but then we discovered something more magnificent. And don't forget, what's really interesting, Now it's for sale. The lucky buyer is not just buying a picture. The lucky buyer is buying a life story, a relationship that actually changed the course of art history because of the relationship between Ruskin and Turner themselves.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christie's Tonight. We're going to carry on with your newspaper headlines. First up, we've got The Times. Alarm over diversity push. Universities could lose research funding if they fail to prioritise inclusivity. That's really interesting stuff, given what we were talking about, all those trigger warnings earlier on tonight. Next is the Daily Mail. Chancellor warned proposal to slash amount that can be put in tax-free accounts could hurt savers and trigger a mortgage crisis. Hands off our cash ISAs, the Mail is saying. And The Mirror is leading with this. Burglar shot by Tony Martin. I have no anger. He did what he had to do. Ex-Cricon farmer who was jailed for killing teen in a raid on his home. There we go. OK, I want to bring you this. We've teased this all night, and if I don't show it to you, you're going to be really upset. So the cyclist was injured in a collision with a van, but have a look. Just have a look and tell what you think. OK, so you can see he's going pretty far. There we go. How did he miss that? Can we just play it one more time? Let's let everyone see it one more time. I mean, it's pretty shocking stuff, really, isn't it? Okay.
Is he all right?
I don't know.
All right, OK, look, we can't show you, but you've seen it, though. I mean, I think it's a bit of a dud, that one, isn't it? OK. All right, let's move on to our Uni and Jack and Austin greatest Britons. First up, Suzanne, can you give us your greatest Briton, please?
So my greatest Britain today is Catherine Birbalsingh, the headmistress at the Michaela Academy in London. She's taken on Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson this week, and who wants to get rid of academies, and I think has rightly pointed out that Labour's education policy focuses on keeping poor kids poor, completely destroying their aspiration and their possibilities to achieve. She's got the right idea. She's got the best state school in Britain, best results. Bridget Phillipson hasn't got a clue. Well done, Catherine Birbalsingh.
OK, Stephen, yours?
Rare for me, but I'm going to support a Labour minister in West Streeting for finally understanding and accepting that we're not putting enough money into educating those coming into our doctors and nurses and recognising that the NHS is bringing in far too many foreign doctors, and we need to change the system in here, just as I wrote in a fair, flexible, forward-thinking immigration policy 10 years ago.
Very balanced, Stephen. Susie, what's yours?
So mine is Idris Elba for all the work that he's doing around, knife crime is an appalling thing. Kids are losing their lives. And I love when people use their fame to do something positive. And he's doing everything in his power to bring down knife crime.
OK.
He's not mad. He's using his fame to do something positive.
OK,
no, it's not.
I'm a big fan of Catherine Birbalsingh, so I've got to take the opportunity to give this one to her. So congratulations, Catherine Birbalsingh. You are the greatest Briton this week. Suzanne, let's get over to your UJ, shall we?
So it's the anonymous judge in the case that you were talking about earlier in your monologue who basically decided a paedophile shouldn't be deported and even blamed his wife for not sleeping with him.
Yeah.
Like, who'd want to sleep with that pervert?
We didn't manage to get that into what I was talking about earlier, but that was incredible stuff. Well, his wife was hospitalised with COVID anyway.
And we should know who this judge is. He's a public servant, he or she.
Incredible stuff.
We should know.
Yeah. Stephen?
Well, I'm going to go for Philip Sands, friend of Keir Starmer, who raised the flag in Chagos, but then accused us all of saying that it's the equivalent of Ukraine and Putin, and arguing that our hold of Chagos is the same as Putin invading Ukraine. I think that's nonsense and ridiculous and an embarrassment.
Susie?
Well, I'm going to go for Daniel Levy. I'm a big Spurs fan. I'm sorry, but he's destroying Spurs. He may have built a great stadium. He's obviously a good businessman, but he needs to go. He's destroying a great club. He's not investing in players. We should have won last night. But genuinely, he should go, and I'm happy to run a campaign on it. Get rid of Daniel Levy.
Pardon? You just got started. They just started.
Just how I felt about the Glaziers who took over United.
Stephen, remind me of yours again. What was your...
Philip Sands.
Look, this is the tough one because the judges, for me, are a plague in this country, and there's some of the decisions they make are really, really ridiculous, and I've been slamming them for a long time. But I think
Well, he's a lawyer.
I think we
too,
have to give it.
isn't he?
Yeah, it's another lawyer, but he's I mean, all the ridiculous things like he did going over to
Daniel Levy doesn't get a look in at all, does he not?
Sorry,
okay, fine, fine.
So
none of us are Spurs fans. I'm United. He's Arsenal.
That's why he wants us to keep Daniel Levy.
Jay to Philippe. There we go, everybody. He's our Union jackass. All right, look, we're going to pass it over to Leo. Look, coming up next is Headliners. Leo Curtis, what you got coming up for us?
Well, we've got a cracking show tonight. We've got Nick Dixon and Lewis Schaefer on the show, two fan favourites. And we're going to be covering loads of stories, including Gino D'Acampo, the allegations against him. Is it just a few jokes, or is it more serious? He seems to be this week's Greg Wallace. We've also got the reparations issue. David Lammy is meeting with Caribbean officials who are demanding trillions of pounds from Britain. And we don't have any money. I'm sorry. And wouldn't it be great to have a government that actually governs in Britain's interests instead of the interests of other countries? And also Bernie Ecclestone is a dad at 89.
89. Incredible stuff. He won't even see his child's 10th birthday. This is incredible. Oh, look, anyway, stay tuned for Headliners, everybody. That is it for Patrick Christie's tonight. I'll be back in a week's time, actually, so I'm having a little bit of time off so you can take a break from me for a little while. Thank you to my fantastic panel. We've had a lovely evening today. I hope you've all enjoyed yourselves, and thank you to the gallery and all the producers here. Done fabulous work tonight. Thank you very much. See you all soon.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed Heat Pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Heading towards the weekend, still plenty of cloudy skies, also some showers and a little bit of hill snow, and it's still going to be remaining chilly in those brisk easterly winds. That's all thanks to an area of high pressure across Scandinavia, bringing us this brisk easterly flow. So it is going to be feeling chilly in the winds, and it is dragging in some cloud, also some rain and some showers across the southeast, pushing up into Wales and central parts of the UK. And this is likely to bring some snow across the hills of Wales, perhaps even the Pennines later in the morning. But a slightly different story to the northwest. Clearer and drier here, likely to see some frost during the first part of the morning. Now, for the beginning of the weekend across the south, it could be quite a damp start for some, with some showers, these merging into longer spells of rain, particularly across parts of East Anglia and the southeast. So quite a murky start to the day, perhaps a few clearer spells across Cornwall. And similar across Wales, northern parts of England, quite a cloudy start, but clearer to the northwest of Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland. But here, that's where we're going to see the frost. And we will start to see some showers just edging their way into eastern parts of Scotland too. Once again, we could see some winteriness to these showers, particularly across high ground and the hills of Scotland. And that's pretty much the setup for the rest of the day. Still a fair amount of cloud around. It could be quite drizzly at times. Still a chance we could see some flurries of snow across high ground in Wales, parts of the Pennines, and the best of the brightness once again to the far northwest of the country. But for all, it is still going to be feeling like a chilly day, particularly in exposed spots in those brisk winds. For the second half of the weekend, once again, plenty of cloud around, but the best of the brightness still across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps less so across parts of Wales. For many, it's going to be a cloudy day, some drizzle at times, and still a very small chance we could see some winteriness across the hills. And that cloud sticks around for the beginning of next week too, and that means